How did you get into theater? Like, what was that experience you had as a kid? Or maybe you were an adult, I don't know. My own particular story is that I was in the 5th grade play. It was the Christmas play. I was cast as Santa Claus. It was the first play I recall ever being in. And my big moment came up. I was on stage by myself. There was an issue with the costume. I don't want to blame anybody, throw anybody under the bus. But the pants fell down and the pillows fell out. And the entire performance stopped as the audience of all my friends and all of my friends' parents and teachers laughed uproariously. And what I realized was that I was not horrified. In fact, I thought it was kind of fun. And I was a big class clown, so I got into it. Fast forward many years, and the other question I asked the cast was, have you ever had a moment that you realized what you were doing had an impact on somebody in the audience? And one of those stories that sort of keeps you going. It's the thing that inspires you to keep being a professional actor or a professional theater director or designer or whatever. And I recall performing in Hamlet. I was playing the role of Hamlet. And Hamlet has this moment where he's so angry at his mother for the betrayal of her marrying the father's brother, Claudius, and I was, just laid it out. Just Hamlet really is furious at all of this seeming betrayal, not only of his mother, but of his father for not being there and him not being prepared or equipped to handle life without those people in his life. So it's as if he's lost both parents. And I remember getting a letter during the run of that production, and a guy said he saw the show, and for the first time since his mother had died 2 years prior, he understood why he was so angry. Socially, we don't kind of allow people to feel the feelings that people naturally feel when they go through grief or whatever. And theater is about trying to find those authentic and sincere emotions that humans deal with. And he said it dawned on him, why he had been so angry when his mother passed away, and even angry at his mother, and he felt guilty for being angry at her. And a ghost didn't come and tell him that his mother was killed or anything. She just died of natural causes, but he was furious and angry, and it never quite, he felt alone until he saw my performance of Hamlet. And so that's one of those stories that I get that I really, draw on when things get rough and hard. So that's mine. Shall we start with, let's start with Angie, since you're holding the mic. So what was your first kind of introduction to theater that made you think, oh, I might be able to do this at some point in my life?
I don't know that this was I don't know that this is the moment where I thought, oh, I could do this for the rest of my life. But mine was also actually the 5th grade Christmas play. And this was a play called Wake Up Santa. I'm sure you're all very familiar with the tale. Santa is asleep. He's so exhausted from having worked all year to get all the gifts together that he is asleep on Christmas Eve. And the elves have tried everything, the reindeer have tried everything, Mrs. Claus has tried everything. And my role was to come in as the child whose voice, the voice of the children on Christmas Eve, is what finally wakes Santa up. And the thing that really stands out to me about this memory is that I was really sick. And so we'll only do the play one time, right? It's 5th grade, elementary school. And I remember I was in my coat getting ready to go and just lying down on my bed and thinking, I really don't feel very well. And my parents saying, everybody's counting on you. This is it. This is literally the show must go on. You got to get up and toddle on out there, kid. And I did, and Santa woke up, and the Christmas gifts were delivered. And so I personally saved Christmas that year in 19 fill in the blank. So that was my first taste of stardom. One of the as the co-founder of NC Stage and as a producer, I get to have lots and lots of memories of times that I feel like have been important and that are things that keep me going and that are exciting to me about doing the work that we do. But one of the ones that always stands out in my memory is when, actually when Charlie and I were still in New York, and I worked for the National Shakespeare Company. And I created their education department. At the time, the National Shakespeare Company toured all over the country, taking Shakespeare to cities that didn't have any other theater. But they didn't have any presence in New York City itself. And so they hired me to create their education program, which I had no business doing. I had no idea how to do this. I was kind of making it up as I went along, which turned out to be great training for many other things that we've subsequently tried to figure out here. But I remember I've been doing this maybe 3 years, and I was at a workshop in a high school in Manhattan. And I remember sitting in this classroom looking out at all of these students who were listening to the actors. At this particular workshop, we had actors and designers there to talk about their work with these students who, some of whom were interested in theater, some of whom weren't. It wasn't really their thing, but they were there. And I remember looking around and thinking, all of these, this is all happening because of me. I pulled all of these things together. I made the phone calls, I rented the van, I got the props, I got all these people here. You know, I sat through days and days of auditions to pull these people together. I made this thing happen. And to me, that is what is so exciting as a producer, is to look out and go, you know, without the work that we put in, the lights don't come on, the lines don't get said, the people don't sit in the seats. You know, that's what's exciting to me. And whether the outcome is a great comedy that lifts people's spirits, like this play, or if it's something that's more of a drama that really makes people think about their place in the world, being able to accomplish that and to do that for our community here in Asheville is it's just the best.
Ryan, how about you?
Oh, hello. I got a couple quick ones. I was a band geek in high school, so if I can get any props for fellow band geeks. A new girl showed up at the school I was at, and she was captivating and beautiful and played on the soccer team and was going to a audition for Anything Goes. And I kind of decided to go to the audition to impress her. And we did Anything Goes, and she was Reno Sweeney in the production. And I remember, for some reason, that gave me confidence. So I, in the middle of the rehearsal process, got up on stage in front of everyone, got down on one knee, held my hands up and said, "Will you go out for a hamburger with me?" And she said yes. So the second one is I was also a dance kid. I went to college. I was a political science major for 2 years. I didn't really get into theater until my junior year of college. Total accident. Really glad it happened, but I was about to leave school. I didn't have any business being there. I didn't like class. I didn't like studying. My father called me up on the phone and said, just, stick it out for one more semester. Just give it a go. I had a friend named Stacy in the theater department, and she was doing a directing showcase for her directing class. She said, "I'm doing this play, this British play called Skylight, and you should absolutely be in it. It'd be a lot of fun." And I was really nervous. I said, "Yeah, I can do this. I got this." 2 weeks, studied my lines. I'm going to show all these theater kids how it's done. I'm going to show them how easy it is. Like, it doesn't take any, all I got to do is learn my lines and walk up on stage. Well, the night of the presentation, I get up on stage. I'm shaking violently. And I, midway through the scene, completely go up on my lines. And I do that thing for about 3 minutes where I angrily stomp back and forth across the stage and mutter like a cartoon character, like, "Fricka, fricka, fricka, fricka." And I got through with it, got home that night, took the script, threw it against the wall, said, "I will never do this ever again. Why anyone would ever put themselves through this nonsense and this shame, like, I will never do this." Woke up the next morning, smile on my face, and said, "That was the most terrifying and thrilling thing I've ever done," and I've been hooked ever since. And I'll make this, I'm a little long-winded, I'll make this quick. Moment that I go back to in theater where I feel like it actually made an impact. I was doing a tour with a group out of DC called the Young Playwrights Theater, and what they do is they take middle school kids and younger, and they write with them. They teach them the skills of playwriting, and they produce their plays, which is a really neat thing for kids to get to do. And we toured those plays. Well, we were supposed to tour them to other middle schools. The grant money came from the state, and it was for nursing homes. So we said, well, this material, it's written by 5th to 6th graders. It's about bullying. Like, how is this even going to remotely play in front of older folks in a nursing home? We went to one kind of rundown inner city nursing home, and the crowd was almost non-responsive. There were a lot of folks that couldn't talk or weren't paying attention or couldn't really take the show in. There was one gentleman in a wheelchair who had lost limbs to diabetes. He had one arm left, vet. And we had a little gig at the end of it where we would write a play with the folks that we perform. Okay, you give us ideas, we'll write your play, we'll perform it. Well, he was the only one really kind of in the room enough to do that. So he kept answering all the questions. We essentially wrote and performed his play. About midway through the play, my scene partner and I, a light kind of clicked on, and we realized that all the things he was giving us was the love story about how he had met his wife, who had died 5 months earlier in the same nursing home. So he asked if we knew this song. Luckily, this old 1930s love song. Luckily, my scene partner knew it, and we finished the scene slow dancing to the song that he and his wife first danced to. And he was bawling, and we were just weepy messes on the floor. But it was pretty cool, and it was pretty cool to see that this tiny little play in this tiny little place for just a few people could have an impact like that. So,
Great. Paula, how about you?
Hello. I'm going to stand. It's the performer in me. So I, of course, have a little bit of a different story from probably everybody else up here, but that's okay. In school, at home in Ireland, back in Ireland, was in, little musicals, and I played the triangle, and we did these little shows. And then in secondary school, high school, we did operettas, and I was, principal singer in that. And then I didn't do any theater up until about 10 years ago. We had moved to New Jersey, and it was a different area, and I needed to go out and meet people. And I've sang for years. I've sung in bands in London, New York, New Jersey. Singing is no problem. I can do that. And I saw a local theater had auditions for Cinderella, the children's show at holidays. And I thought, I can do that, So I went and auditioned, and I got cast. And then I kept on going back and getting cast for more things, and continued to learn. And I took a couple of classes in HB Studio in Manhattan. And it's been 10, 11 years, and then I came here and have been cast in this fantastic show. But I've got to give props here. So I was going to tell you this privately, but I'll tell you it now. So being involved in this group, who are an amazing group of people, and working with Angie, you have changed the way that I approach acting. And thanks to you, I will approach it differently. You've taught me things that I never knew. But it's just been fantastic. It's been great. Thank you. And so one of the musicals that I was in is Beehive, the 60s musical, and I portrayed Janis Joplin. Exactly, right? So a guy came up to me afterwards and he said, I saw Janis at Woodstock. He said, it was like being back there. I was like, I'm done. Stick a fork in me. So that's what I got.
Thank you. Corinne, what about you?
My performance, I started in dance, so I've always been kind of movement-centered, but, as a kid, I was 5 or 6, and I was put in a music camp, and they were doing this adorable little show called Of Mice and Mozart, and I thought, this is going to be so great. And all I wanted was one part. I was like, I wanted one part, and I was so excited about it. The interesting thing about the whole casting process is right around this time, my grandmother died. And we were kind of taken out of camp for the weekend, and then we came back. And I don't know if it was sympathy or talent, but I got the part that I wanted. And that part was Marie Antoinette. She's supposed to be very young, and she meets Mozart. And I had kind of that one laugh line, which was like, let them eat cake. And it was delivering that line, knowing not only, you know, that it was funny, but why it was funny. And I was like, oh, okay, it's not, you don't have to be cute, you have to know what you're actually trying to do. And that was like, oh, I got it. The bug happened. My kind of why I come back to it story actually is more recent. One of the jobs I have as a performer is working with the Lazoom comedy bus tours. It's the hardest job I've ever had as a performer. You constantly have to be thinking on your feet. It's a weird experience. If anybody doesn't know what it is, it's a bus. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you do because you're locals, but you know, it's a bus tour of Asheville. Thanks. Where you're giving information. It's like sketch comedy and improvisation all in one. And I had a tour a couple months ago where I had, pretty full bus. I knew I had like a party of 8 at some point. It was a family, and I could tell that they were game. And so I was, ribbing on them. I gave them nicknames, and I talked to two of the ladies at the break. And one of the ladies said, is that wig hot? And I said, oh yeah, it's really hot. She's like, yeah, I know. I used to wear them. They really are warm. And so we, connected on that. As they were leaving, and we have maybe 15 minutes from one tour to another, her sister came up to me and she was like, yeah, we're celebrating all those birthdays that you gave us those little tiny purple hats for, and that was great. That woman you talked to about her wig, this is her last few months. And so we wanted a memory where we could not think about that and just be together as a family and laugh our asses off. And they did, and the fact that they said, thank you for that, I was like, it's not so dumb, the thing I do on a daily basis. Sometimes it feels like, what silly, bizarre, dumb sketch comedy thing that I do where people just have a beer and relax, and sometimes that's just what you need. So that's mine.
Thanks. Michael?
Lord, really? Okay. Okay. My story's bad enough. Okay. Mine is going to be both questions combined into one story because it's how I got into theater. And I will really try and get through this without being an emotional wreck, I promise. So I was 17 years old and given my first big lead in my junior year in high school, called Flowers for Algernon is the play. And there was a movie called Charlie that Cliff Robertson won Best Actor for in either 1969 or 68, not sure. Well, we, the days before VCRs, we actually got the reel-to-reel, my drama teacher did, and I studied Cliff Robertson and basically did a mimicry, very good mimicry of him playing the role. And it was the final performance, Saturday night, and of course, we give flowers to the director, and everybody comes up on stage, parents and everybody congratulating. And see, all these stories got me way wound up, you guys. This woman came up with tears literally streaming down her face, and barely able to speak. She said, "You changed my life tonight. I will never think of mentally handicapped people in the same way ever again, and it was all because of what you did." And I could see that her entire axis had shifted as to who she was. She saw things differently than she had ever seen them before, and it felt like I was the one who made that happen. And I went home that night and said, "Mom, Dad, I'm going to be an actor," because we clearly don't do it for the money. But the fact that, and it hit me then, if I have that effect on one person, what if 100 people, 1,000 people? What if we can have that kind of effect on, a great many people? And so ever since then, I've dedicated my life to it. So.
How old were you?
17 years old.
17.
Scott?
Well, I was a 70s kid. I grew up in Johnson City, Tennessee, and of course every week of my life was counting down the minutes till 10 p.m. on Saturday nights. Do you remember what that was? The Carol Burnett Show. But I'm kind of like Michael. Mine, I'll combine the two because it was the first experience was also one where I was like, okay, I can see that this has an impact. I had a sister named Cindy who had cerebral palsy. I mean, it was a very severe case of cerebral palsy. So she lived to be 14. She never walked. She never talked. She wore diapers her whole life. She drank from baby bottles. And in the living room of our house, she would be on this mattress in the middle of the floor. That's where she lived during the day, and then Mom would carry her to bed at night. Well, when I was 5 or 6, and I don't remember which year it was, but for Christmas, I got a couple of puppets. I got a Cookie Monster, and then I got another one that was like this furry red monster that looked like a Muppet, but it was just some other random puppet. And to that point, I had never heard my sister laugh except if Hee Haw was on. She loved Hee Haw and the Lawrence Welk Show, which I don't know why that is. But anyway, she loved Hee Haw. But otherwise, she just moaned. She would moan of approval or whatever. But I discovered we had this rectangular ottoman in the living room. And I could turn it on its side, and I could hide behind it and do puppet shows for Cindy while she was laying there on the floor. And I made her laugh. And I was like, oh, I'm sold. And so from that point on, I started doing puppet shows for kids in the neighborhood. And then we built a puppet stage, and we sold concessions, and I went around and sold tickets. And so I was hooked. I mean, if I could make her laugh, by God, I'm hooked. I'm in. So that was kind of my first taste of it.
That's great. Thank you, everybody, for those stories.